We'll go ahead and get started when you're ready to set up. So this is session 4, which is Explore Your Future, part 2. So the last pieces you guys focused in on the careers for the students, and then before that we did the personal identity things. So now we're going to take that information that they learned about themselves and help them connect it to the high school, specifically the career clusters that they went over and were identified for them. So we'll go into that. But also a big chunk of this section is dealing with the decision-making process. So we want students to be comfortable, understand, how and why we make decisions and the consequences that are connected to them. And then also how to select, using that information, select a high school that's a great fit for them. So those are the 2 main principles of this lesson that we're gonna go through. As I kind of shared, there are quite a few things that you guys are going to be distributing and collecting back, so you want to spend some time looking at that, I would suggest, and speaking to your mentor partner about who wants to be responsible for this, just so that you guys have things and it's ready to go and you guys have a good flow for the day. So mentor...
We're part of the pass out last time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't think the addition that we will have are the passports. So
Okay.
last year we didn't use the passports.
No, I meant just last session.
Oh, just last session.
We got
Okay.
2 packets, one for 3 and one for 4.
Mm-hmm. So you'll still be separated for 4. So all your 4 stuff will be labeled together. Is that what you? Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we run through the
well,
same
I'm
conversation.
saying, I think we already had it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do have it. Correct. Yes, you have it. But I was just sharing. Just figure out who wants to be responsible for what pieces inside of this that you have so many. Yeah. So in terms of so we're on page 4.1. If you have your curriculum guide, kind of already talked about the overview in the session spotlight. But for the mentor pre-work, you just definitely want to review this curriculum 4. The prep call with your mentor partner, I think, is going to be very important again, because you guys have quite a few moving pieces, and the lessons is kind of segmented. So you'll focus on the decision-making process, and then you guys are going to jump into the high school piece as well. Also, as a part of session 4, you guys are going to divide the students up based on their career clusters to help them identify high schools. So you want to have a mentor kind of be responsible for each of those groups. So definitely want to spend some time talking before you go into that classroom, so you can decide who wants to take on which roles. Something else as a good tip, you guys have your Navion spreadsheets for your students. I would take a look at that so you can already see where your groups are going to be at. So you'll see all the kids that had enterprising, all the kids that had artistic, so you can get a good gauge about how many kids are going to be in a group once you clump them by careers. So look at that ahead of time too. And if you don't have that anymore and you need it, just let Molly know, and if she has it, she'll send it. If not, she'll request it from me and I can get it over to her. Something else to look at, during the training, we passed out the high school showcase book list for you all. You definitely want to take a look at that, because 70 minutes of the session you guys are going to spend in this book with the students. So it'd be a good idea just to become familiar with how to use the book. Would be a good idea. And then you can visit our Cleveland Schools website, so you can get more information about the high schools as well if you like. But I think we did a good job of putting a lot of the information here. You'll probably find more in this book than you will online for the high schools. So on page 4.2, it talks about all the session materials and supplies. So here is your laundry list of the different things you're going to be distributing and collecting. So that would be a good way to help you divide up with your mentors. So I am not going to talk much about that, but 4.3, page 4.3 is the step-by-step guide there. So we're going to start with our opening, which you'll go back through and you'll welcome the students. You're going to talk about your guidelines for the group that you have, your group norms. Also outline the agenda for the students and talk about any housekeeping items you all may have. The first hour after that is going to be spent on the making good choices section. So you're going to have some scenarios to share with the students, so you'll get an opportunity to role play with the students, or you guys can do a small group discussion. So depending on how your students want to jive for that part of the lesson.
Who's making that decision, them or us?
So you all can talk to the students when you divide them in groups, and we'll go into that as we go on lesson, yes. And then the next 15 minutes, you guys will introduce the high school choice process to the students. So you're gonna be going through the various materials that you have for that session. So you're just gonna introduce it, kind of give them a roadmap of how to use the materials that you guys are gonna cover, and then you guys will take a break. After the break, as you see, 70 minutes of the time is to be spent going through selecting the best fit high school for them. As you know, our major goal for the program is to have our students become choosers for their high school. We want them to be ready and be able to select a high school, so we're spending a lot of time in this session on there because that is our main objective for True2U, is to help the students make an informed decision about where they want to go for high school. So during this part of the lesson, you're gonna have the students share about their careers that they learned about, that they were interested in. So there was some homework that you all left for them. After you had your one-on-ones with the students, they narrowed it down to 3 careers. Students are to do some research on that, so you can have the students share out about those careers here. And then based on their career interests, we want the students to select 6 high schools that they're interested in and that they want to visit during the high school choice fair. And as a part of selecting those 6, we want them to look at the careers that they've selected and then match up with the high schools that line up with that. After you all complete that one, you're gonna end the day with the icebreaker instead of starting this time. It's gonna be a Starburst icebreaker. It's a really fun one, opportunity for the students to learn more about you and also themselves before you guys close out the session for the day. And then at the very end, you're gonna spend 5 minutes as a reflection. So you'll have students recap what they learned today, what you all went over, and then go ahead and close out your session. Also, something that we didn't note in here that I thought about as well, you guys will not see the students again until next year after this, and then not even in January and February. So I would remind the students that our next session is not gonna be until February, because they'll go away for the holiday break and then they'll have a high school fair in January, so you will not see them again until February. And also late in February, February 23rd. So let them know.
Then we carry over what they'll be doing during that interim period, it's such a lengthy period.
Well, yes, because they'll have the high school choice fair that they're going to be going to in January, and then they're going to be doing some lessons on True2U. Come on, say whatever you like. They're going to be having some lessons about the high school choice fair. So there is some lessons that their social studies or English teacher is going to be going with them about transition from middle school to high school during that time. So they're like 4 mini lessons that are a part of their class that they'll have. All right. So any questions about the brief overview before we go ahead and go to the meeting, please?
Fair can take place at their respective school or one central location?
It'll be at the Wolstein Center.
Oh, okay.
And so the dates for that is going to be Monday, January 30th, Tuesday the 31st, and then Wednesday, February 1st.
Is that listed someplace?
We'll send it out to you all because we'll be able to share with you exactly what day your schools are going to be going at what time. So if you are available to go with your students, you're more than welcome to. So we'll be sharing that out with you all. A great question. So we'll go ahead. Any other questions? I'm sorry, I didn't cut anybody off. So for session 4, for your opening, go ahead and welcome your students. You also want to do a recap of session 3. So on page 4.4 of the curriculum, there are, we ask that you ask about 2 to 3 students to share their thoughts about the True2U career view that you all had in the last session. Just, tell you how they felt about it, what they enjoyed, what they liked. There are also some prompts to help the students answer or share out. So what are some of the habits of an effective employee? So you guys talked about that. And then also, did you learn anything about the mentors that resonates with you and their journey or your journey? So this is some prompts that you can use if you find that students are having a hard time remembering what happened in the last session. So you can use those 2 to kind of draw some information from the students about what they remember from the last session. So you recapped, you guys have done your norms, and you have them share out. Then you're gonna go ahead and pass out the True2U journals. So this is what the journal looks like. You should have enough for each of your students in your packets there. So you're gonna pass the journals out as well as something to write with for the students, because they are going to do some reflection in their journals. So there's a nice little a prompt here that you can read to the students, but I won't read it in depth for you all. But you can share that we're going to pass out the True2U journal to you. And on the very first page, we want you to write one thing that you've learned within the last month about who you are or where you want to go. So give the students a few minutes to write something in the journal. So I would read that, probably that statement verbatim. It could be something you were thinking about after our last session, or what you're thinking about for high school or careers. And then you can give an example. For example, one thing I thought about after the first session was to kind of help them and get some thoughts. So give them a moment, let them go ahead and write in their journals here. After they've, you give them time to write, ask about 2 to 3 students to share. Only, those students who are comfortable, let them share out about what they wrote in their journals. You want to thank them for sharing and participating. And then you're going to pass out another item. So the past course that you have, so that's why I said you guys probably want to decide, so you have someone on guard for each of the items. You're going to go ahead and pass out the passport to the students. And so after you pass out the passports, you're going to tie it together for the students. So today we're going to continue to focus on STEM and Graham's 9 steps to success by working on multiple steps 5, 6, and 8. Step 5 is about growing by moving out of your comfort zone. And then you'll ask the students to follow along with you on page 25 of this book. So you'll go ahead and read it to the students. If you want to ask a student to read aloud, that's fine as well. But if you're going to read, just, make sure you point all the students to the page so that they can follow along. So I will read it just because it helps frame the work for today. It says, to grow, you have to learn your comfort zone, confront fears, and take risks. Fear of the unknown is one of the greatest obstacles you will face. To be successful, you must learn to overcome the natural fear and step outside of what has become comfortable and familiar. Each of you is going to be making a choice about high school for the next year. So that's why I wanted to read it, because we're talking about the comfort zone. They're leaving middle school into high school. As a freshman, it can be a little scary and intimidating because you're starting all over again. You were the big kids on top, and now you're starting all over again. So that's a good transition for that. So you'll read through the prompt with the students, and then there's a recap, the last sentence of that very first paragraph on page 4.5. It says, what Mr. Graham is saying is that feeling fear is natural, but that you have to overcome it to be successful. And then, so you're focused in on that was step 5, and so you're gonna go ahead and go into step 6 and 8 also in this book with the students. So you're gonna go ahead and read from page 30 there. It says, what you are in the world is largely the result of the decisions you have made so far in your life. The choices that you make will be one of your greatest challenges. How can you tell the difference between a good decision and a bad decision? A good decision has a desirable consequence. It helps you grow and reach your goal. A bad decision has an undesirable consequence. And then you guys are going to let them know that you're going to talk more about the decision-making process in the next activity. So it's setting them up to go into the next part. Right? So after you've gone through the passport with the students, you're going to go ahead and transition into activity 4A, which is making good choices. So for this activity, you have some scenario cards that you're going to be using with the students. You are also going to be having the students use their trackers. So again, you want to be prepared for these, because you kind of have quite a few materials that you're going to be working through. So as you get your things together, so you'll have the scenario cards that look like this, and you'll have 2 sets of these for your groups, because you'll divide your students up. So you'll have 3 different scenarios in here. So it'll give the description of the scenario, and then the second card will be the choices that match that scenario. So you'll have 3 scenarios and then 3 choice cards here, decision cards, I should say. And then there is a Making Good Decisions poster, which I do not seem to have, but it is in their tracker, so we'll look at this one here. So exactly what's on the sheet in their tracker, you'll have a poster of this as well, to post up in the classroom.
So you put that before we even start?
Yeah, you can put it up or as you're going, because you're gonna have some other things that you're gonna be posting up to, so if you have limited space, you'll, tear it down and put it back up. But it looks just like this in the tracker here. Also, so this is the worksheet. There's a Making Good Choices worksheet also that you're gonna be using with the students. So they'll refer to that, it's in the True2U tracker, so this is it right here. So for this activity, you should have the students sitting in a small group. So you'll divide the students up depending on how large your group is, 3 to 4 students, or if you have a larger group, 5 to 6 students within the group. Now here is when you can have your students decide if they want to act out the scenarios or if they just want to discuss them. When I came on board for True2U, it was actually during this session, so I got to see groups act them out, which was pretty, it was fun to see the kids be able to do that, and they had a lot of fun with it. So you'll explain to the students what you all are going to do, and then you'll go ahead and let them decide, do you want to act it out or however. So go ahead and divide them in the groups. So you'll do all that first. And then you'll let them know. So on page 4.6, it talks about today we're going to talk about choices. And I would read this verbatim here. Today we're going to talk about choices. A good choice is one where you consider others and your future before you decide. You have to consider the implications of possible actions. By thinking beyond yourself and beyond the moment, you are more likely to select choices that have positive social and future benefits. And so in groups, you're going to role play or discuss a set of scenarios that require decisions. So it tells you how to... Go ahead.
I'm sorry. How do we pick the way we're grouping them? Is that based on their careers and things?
So this, for this one is, we haven't gotten to that part
Okay.
yet. So this is before, so you can either select them yourselves or you can have the students pair up for the groups however you want.
And
So
so you're trying to get into 3 groups because we have the 3 different.
So for your group, how many students do you have?
12.
12, and so it's you and another mentor. So since you guys have the 12, you guys can split them up into 2 groups, so you're larger, so 6 and 6. If you want, and then depending on your space, if you can even break it down into more, because you have 3 different scenario cards, so I would do the 3 groups. But depending on your space, it would probably dictate how many groups you can have. But you want to get 3 groups, but if you don't have the space for it, try to divide them into 2 groups. So once you have your groups divided, so you want the 3 groups if possible, but again, if your space is not allowed, try to break it up in 2, and if it's not possible, the room is too small, then you guys can go through them together as a group, okay? So you'll go ahead and you'll divide the groups up, and then you'll give them the scenario cards. So if you have a group that wants to role play, you want to let them know that before you get started, you want to decide who's going to play which role. And in fact, what I'm going to do is have you guys pair up so you guys can look at these. So, if you're going to role play, I will share with the students you want to decide who's going to play which part. Okay? And then if you guys are going to continue, just do it in a group. You guys want to discuss the scenario as a group and then figure out what choice you think is the best possible choice. So, you'll go ahead and do that. So I'll let you guys spend some time looking at those. So, we'll just role play. We'll do one and then so that you guys get the feeling. So I would let you guys start. You guys come through. Okay. So go ahead and read your scenario. Are you guys acting out or you guys discussed it as a group?
Discuss that.
Okay. So tell us your scenario.
Scenario number 1. Tasha is in charge of watching her 5-year-old sister Marcella for the day. Marcella keeps nagging Tasha to take her to see a movie that came out last weekend. Tasha saw the movie last weekend with her friends and she thought it was good, but it was pretty violent, and at one point it was so scary that Tasha screamed in the theater. Marcella won't stop asking her to go. Tasha's friend John is encouraging Tasha to take Marcella to the movie. Her other friend, Denise, tells her she shouldn't because it's too scary. What are Tasha's options and what should she do?
So what were your options?
Option
Either
number
that-
A.
Oh, okay, go ahead. I'll take that.
Okay.
That Tasha takes Marcella to the movie. B was Tasha does not take Marcella to the movie, but finds one more age appropriate. C, Tasha asks her mom what should she do. And D, Tasha yells at her sister to stop nagging and go watch television. So we come to the conclusion that B is possible, that she does not take her to that particular movie, but find one more age appropriate, like an animated type movie. Or C, go to her mom, let her mom make the decision on what they should do.
So share a little bit more with us about how you guys came to that conclusion or made
Well,
those
one
choices.
thing, we know that Marcella, if Tasha screamed in the movie, and Marcella is only 5, we say came to the conclusion that it's going to traumatize Marcella. Fighting for a long time, maybe bedwetting, or, things, dreams, nightmares, not sleeping at night. So look, go ahead.
Another thing in life, always you have options. You should never put all your eggs in one basket. So it's important that we make clear to young people that you have alternatives. You don't have to just make a snap decision. You can look at 3 or 4 options.
Okay. And I like what you're sharing, and that's actually a part that we're going to do when we keep going a little bit further. We're going to talk about what happens when you do make a choice. So I like where you're going with that, but we'll come back to it. So, but as you guys are doing this with the students, they're going to talk about why they made that choice, why they felt it was the best choice. And we're listening, okay? Because they may say that I'll take her to the movie and whatever happens, that's what happens. So you might want to jump in there at that point, but we're going to talk about what are consequences of our choices. So we'll get to that too. So
And the 4th one, yelling at her sister to stop. In certain areas, that's all we get sometimes. Is being yelled at, being turned back, being disappointed. And she's just 5. She's very impressionable. So you want to try to deal with her, come down to her level a little bit to where she is, and try to bring her up in a best to let her know, well, maybe that's just not the right time right now. Okay, when you get a little older, then we'll do something else. Let's go upstairs and let's play with your tea set. For reinforcement.
Gotcha. Oh. So that was one. So I just realized as she was sharing that we've heard that one a lot. So can I get someone else to share their scenario? Anybody comfortable? Go ahead.
Cameron is a senior in high school, star student. He's trying to decide which college he should attend. He's got into Harvard and Case. Cameron was so excited when he got into Harvard because it's famous and everyone congratulated him a lot when they found out. But it's kind of far away, it's in Boston. And it doesn't have a great program for what he wants to study. When Cameron told people he got into Case, they didn't seem excited when he mentioned Harvard. However, Case is closer to home, which Cameron likes because he's really close to his family and wants to be able to see them often. And it's a great program for what he wants to study. Cameron's mother thinks he should go to Harvard, but his uncle, Cameron was really close to, is encouraging him to go to Case because it has a better program for what he wants to do. What do you think Cameron should do?
So
I think the choices are.
Our choices were Cameron attends Case because it is most in line with his future goals. Cameron attends Harvard. Cameron's confused and can't make a decision. He fails to enroll in any college. Cameron calls the campuses and asks to visit again to meet the faculty and students.
And so what did your group feel was the best choice or decision?
We agreed that decision A, Cameron attends Case because it is most in line with his future goals, was the best choices.
And tell us why you all felt that was the best.
So we kind of looked at it as it was a pros versus cons type of situation. So Harvard had, sure, the name, everyone was congratulating Cameron for it. It would have been a good school, but not for the program that he was seeking. Case was a better alternative for that. Although his mother pushed him to go to Harvard, for his future endeavors, it made more sense for Cameron to go to Case to enroll in that program that he's his interest.
Okay, great job.
And we kind of shared too, like, what were your choices when you made your decision to go to college, and then what were mine, when I made my decision, and we both seem to focus more on the program.
Okay, so good point. So you guys looked at the pros of being more aligned to what his career or his major interest was, and that's how you made your decision.
One thing that was never addressed is the cost.
Hey, yeah, I mean,
That's a good
case in Harvard.
Are those cheap, buddy?
Yep. Well, let's assume for our scenario that he has a full ride to book, so he
Oh,
only
see,
has to
that's
think
what
about
you
which one he wants to
that's
go
what
to.
you did.
But no, that's it with the students. So after you guys have gone through your scenarios, the students have shared out. You're gonna hold or hang up the Making Good Choices poster. Again, I don't have it here, but it's inside of the workbook, so you'll let students know it's on page 11 of your tracker. So if you look on page 4.7, we're at the large group debrief at the bottom down here. So you're still with the students. Let's take a few minutes and talk about the steps in making good choices. So step one is to identify the challenge or opportunity. So you can go back to the things that the students were sharing. Okay, you guys identified that the challenge was, okay, Marcella is probably going to be scared. She wants to go to this movie, but I kind of don't think so. The challenge or opportunity here is, okay, I have a choice to make about the college. Do I go where everybody is kind of encouraging me to go, make me feel good about it, or to the school that I know is more aligned with what I'm interested in doing? So then you want to brainstorm the possible solutions. So we have the scenario cards, but a student may have come up with a solution that we didn't even offer on the sheet. And in fact, last year in the session I was in, there was a student that brought up, another option, and that's fine. So we want the students to brainstorm those possible solutions. And then step 3, we want them to explore and evaluate possible choices. We want you to evaluate means to think of the pros and the cons of the possible choices, which I heard a lot about in this group. It was the pros and the cons about what I should do in making the decision about the college that I'm going to go. And then predict consequences. I heard that a lot over here. Well, she could have nightmares, those things could affect her. So those were some consequences if I were to take her to go see that movie. So I definitely heard that happening. And then 5, make a decision, plan the best way to execute the decision and act on the decision. So if someone were to have selected D, which was to go back and follow up and get some more information, it would sound like that. To go talk to a parent, it would sound like that as well.
Correct.
And then step 6, you want to evaluate the result of the decision and accept responsibility for the result of the decision, okay? So you'll talk through that and you can have the students look at, okay, I heard you say that when you came up with this answer, I heard you all when you were discussing the scenario, so that they can see, they may not be naming these things verbatim, but they are doing it in their process of making the selection on those cards.
You know, clear about number 6? I don't understand, accept responsibility for the results of the decision. What's that mean?
So a lot of times, sometimes we make choices and we walk away from the consequences of those as if we didn't cause this thing to happen by the choices that we make. Something that we don't use in here, but that would be a good example is if I'm a student in class and I decide to be disruptive and I get suspended. I have to be responsible for my actions or the choice that I made not to participate. Maybe I don't get those points. And that's a negative consequence. It can be something that's positive as well, that has an effect on other people. So you want to talk about that, and maybe that would be a good example. Or you can even think about the scenario, okay, if I were to go away to college, maybe I have a little sibling or something like that I'll be leaving behind. So there's some different type of things that you can use.
Haven't you heard the comment, you made that decision, I'll live with it?
Yep,
That's all.
that is a good
You
one.
gotta be responsible to step up.
Mhm.
I was gonna say also, and one that's not listed in their decisions, so we'd have to look at in this scenario, the demarcation, transportation, how much the expense would be, where you're gonna live, things like that. Take all those things into consideration as well. So there's more scenarios to this.
Oh, absolutely, and we cannot think about all of them, but
No,
yeah,
the
we
students
definitely just
will.
and they will share. So you guys will get to have those conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Very active.
Yep, very lively conversations as I shared. This was my first session for True2U, and it was.
Nathan Hill, much different than Willow.
Okay.
They didn't want to really almost put in sometimes.
Okay.
They may come up with help. But here, we've got a lot of students at this school that I can see them stepping up to the plate and coming up with some.
And you have a lot of prompts too, to help if your students, you know, you give them time to think about it, if they aren't, you know, having some difficulty coming up with things. You have a lot of prompts, you have some options here for them to consider. They don't have to just figure them out on their own. So this should help with that if you experience that with your groups as well. So once you guys have gone through that, so you'll have some conversations back and forth. On page 4.9, and it talks about share with students tips for understanding choices. So a good point that I always like to share with students, number one, you can always change your mind about a decision that you've made. I think that's a big one because sometimes that creates a lot of fear in making a choice because you feel like you're so stuck with it. But you can change your mind, so you want to share that with students. There is probably no one right choice. So some of the scenarios, there were plenty of choices and there wasn't a wrong one in some of these cases. So there's probably no one right choice and few decisions are totally wrong. So again, that alleviates some of the pressure in making a choice. Deciding in a process, not a fixed one-time event. We are constantly reevaluating based on new information. So a decision may not have had the consequences you expected, so you can start the process over again. Okay? Number 4, when it comes to a career decision, remember you are not choosing for a lifetime. How many of us have had the same job since we started? Probably none of us. So you have an opportunity to start over. So that one might be a good example. And they probably heard that as you were sharing your career stories with them in the last session. So that's something that you can share out with the students so that they can see what that looks like in real life too.
And actually, how many of us have gone to college and got degrees, but no one's working in what we went to college for?
That's a great one too.
Life changes you. And
Yeah.
someplace different than what you were.
And sometimes
You
we
got
start
background.
jobs after college
Yeah, you have
and then you
background.
find
You're not
out
doing what you went to college
what you're
for.
skilled in from
That's
doing
skilled
the
in.
work and then you
Amen.
decide to go back
So
and get a
the
credential
decision's
in
not
that.
always ours.
Education also teaches how to think and reason, not
Yes,
necessarily.
definitely.
Use the old noggin.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And that's what we want to get them to do. Use that. Try to make the best choices they can possibly.
And we're giving them steps to consider in doing that to help.
Yeah, that's very good.
So number 5, there's a big difference between decision and outcomes. So you can make a good decision based on the information at hand and still have a bad outcome. So that's something very important. The decision is within your control, but the outcome is not. All decisions have the elements of chance or risk. So that's a good point too. Sometimes we make decisions based on the information we have, and after we made a choice, we find out something else. And because we didn't have that one piece of information, sometimes the choice we made, we don't get the outcome we were expecting. So you make the best decision based on the information that you have. But-
Circumstances change too.
Exactly, absolutely. Number 7, indecision is a decision not to decide. This is a good one in pertaining to the high school choices because we have quite a few students who will not make a high school choice, but they will be placed in a high school, we know, right? So indecision is a decision not to decide. There are probably risks involved in not deciding and not taking action. What might some risks be? So you can have the students talk about that. And you can even use the high school choice if you like. Okay, so if someone doesn't make a high school choice, what could you run the risk of happening? And then number 8, try to avoid either or thinking. Usually there are more than 2 options. Be imaginative and creative. Number 9, you may want to consult others for information, but eventually you must make that decision.
That's part of like when I was teaching people how to find a job in vocational guidance services and Spanish American, is that sometimes a person would want to find out more of what the job entails. You would go into the occupational handbook. And one thing that was very, very common and truly built relationship with employers was sending a candidate, not for a job necessarily, but to call an informational interview and asking that person who is not the personnel manager, not the human resource person, but the person working in the department that the person has an interest in, and taking a few minutes and asking an individual, A, how did he or she get the job, and what was necessary for that person to get it, or at least to gain consideration and prepare their approach based on what they learned through the process of ending up where they want to be.
Yeah, and I like that information you just shared because as we go on in the lesson, when the students are picking the 6 high schools,
Yes.
we want to help them come up with questions to ask at the high school choice fair. So some of what you said you could use for that activity, most definitely. So good one. And then the final thing, number 10, listen to your inner voice. So someone brought that up, that's why I was like, hold that. So listen to your inner voice and trust your intuition. What feels right if you are making a decision that can have long time consequences, take your time, don't rush, and make an impulsive decision. Okay? So you'll end that activity with the students. There's a scenario here for you to read, but at the very bottom where it says ask students to respond to the following prompt, you want to read this to the students. It says, now think about one of the milestones you will achieve in the next few months, such as selecting a high school. Walk through a possible choice you will need to make on that path using the steps to make good choices. So predict the consequences of a choice that you make. So we want to have the students reflect on that. So that's the end of the decision making process for the students. Any questions about that?
Yeah, when I guess I never thought about it last year when we went through this, but what's the possibility of them changing schools from like freshman to sophomore?
Oh, it happens all the time. So in terms of, I don't have the numbers for this year, but I do know that our students can be very transient within the district. So it does happen. What we do know is that students that make a choice are less likely to change high schools. Students who are placed in a high school, those are usually the students that are moving from one building to the other.
Who makes that determination to place people that have not made a choice?
So we have an office of school choice and enrollment, so that's their.
But what if they haven't made a choice? Who determines the choice for those that haven't made a choice of what high school?
So the school district does. Yeah, the school district. Yeah. So that's the end of that part. So the next section, activity 4B, is the introduction to the high school choice. So in this activity, imagine that you are setting up the next part of the lesson. So you are going to be showing the students the different tools that you all are going to be using for the high school selection process. So you're just introducing the things. So you're showing the students how to use these things. So in here, you guys are going to have quite a few materials again to share with the students. So one being the booklet for the students that you have. Once you distribute these to the students, have them write their names on there because you will be using these again in another session. So have your students write their names on these when we pass these out. Also, just as an FYI, we will have some inserts for this book. There is some new information regarding high schools that we got after the fact. So we will be going to the schools to put the inserts in the books. However, once I get those copies, I'll send it to Molly and she'll share it with you. So there'll be 3 schools that'll have some changes that we're going to be sharing that information out with you that's not reflected in this book currently. All right, so just an FYI. So the goal of this activity is to have students better understand their choices for high school, so know what those options are that are available to them, and to feel better informed about the schools. So you're going to have, in terms of materials, on page 4.11, it talks about those at the very top. So you're going to need this showcase booklet. You are going to have some posters. So you have the high school selection process poster, so you want to go ahead and post this one up. Oh, you know what? I was looking for this. Making good choices was in here all along. So that is in here. I missed that.
You put all the stuff on the wall.
You want to put it on the wall, so you'll have your adhesive in there that you can use. And then there is a map of the high school so that the students can see where those high schools are located at. And all of these documents that I'm showing you are actually inside of the high school showcase booklet that the students are going to receive too. And then here, this is where you guys are going to spend a lot of time referring the students to, because this lists all the high schools by the career clusters. So the students have identified the careers that they're interested in, so you're going to have them look at this to figure out which high schools align with that career choice. So again, this section, this introduction is 15 minutes before you guys go out on your break. You're walking students through this, you're giving them an overview of how to use these materials so that they're gonna be ready when they come back from the break to go into the next activity. So, talked about having them put their names on here, just make sure I didn't miss anything. So, you're gonna refer them to the process, so they'll have the books too. The very first page of the book, and they're in the middle of the table for you all, is the process. So you guys will explain this timeline. So when we had the training, we talked about this timeline here. So you're gonna be explaining to them what's gonna be happening now. So we want them, right now, we want students to explore your high school choices. So I will share that with them. Right now, we're gonna be introducing the high school choices to you. We want you all to explore them. So now through late January or early February, you all will visit your school choices by attending the high school choice fair. Again, those dates, now that we know them, are Monday, October 30th, Tuesday the 31st, and February 1st. February 1st, we do have an evening session for students to come with their parents. And then a lot of parents or families who are outside of the Cleveland School District also come during that time to the fair. Monday the 30th, Tuesday the 31st, and Wednesday, February 1st. January, I'm sorry, what did I say?
You said October.
I did, I'm sorry. Not even listening to my Jan, so scratch that. So January 30th, the 31st, and February 1st. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't even hear myself saying October.
They're called high school fairs?
High school choice fair.
Choice fair.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that take? Oh,
At the Wolstein Center. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm sorry if I just really confused everyone there. So in spring, you'll talk about the step there. It's going to be open enrollment, or the lottery closes for all school choices, and they must be submitted. So that's going to happen in the spring. So the students by March 13th need to make a selection. Mm-hmm. So also in spring, the lottery results are going to be announced for students, so they'll find out their choices if they're a part of the lottery. And then there's a post-lottery enrollment that begins also in the spring. And then in fall, they're going to attend their first day of school. So you'll walk them through that.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
What about the schools like the arts, do they have to petition for it?
So the
What
schools,
are the timelines for those?
so those schools, they have their own individual information that they communicate directly to the students. So
They can get
as
that
a part of
fair
this,
too, right?
mm-hmm. So the students or their teachers are going to be doing in-depth lessons with them about the process. So they're going to be getting many lessons in school, either with their social studies or their English teachers, about the actual process and how to log into the portal and all that stuff. But for us, we're aware of it. If a student asks you a specific question, refer them to their teacher, who's going to be receiving that information to share out with the students. But for us, we're all about helping them make an informed decision with and outlining the process for them. But the details they'll get from their teachers.
Can I
So,
say something about the-
please.
about the fair?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, is everybody second year person here, second year?
Second year.
This
Uh-huh.
is their second year. Well, I went to the fair last year, and I would totally recommend it for everybody to go to that, because I was really impressed with the students that each high school picked to represent their high school. They were very, very enthusiastic about saying, this is our high school is the one we want you to come to. And each school was like that. I think there was one school that didn't show up, but for whatever reason. But all the schools, high school students, I thought were very, very well selected to represent their school, and were very enthusiastic about it. So our kids, the 8th grade kids, should feel good about going up and talking to some of the different schools. And sometimes you have to kind of encourage them, like a couple of guys that
To go up to the
go up to a certain school, like, well, did you talk with this such and such a school yet? And they realize, well, why don't you go over and talk to them?
Yeah, and that's why having those questions ready helps them, because they have something to go off of what to ask each of the
At
schools.
these fairs, the representatives of respective schools, are they administrators, teachers, or students, or a combination
There's
thereof?
students, I know for the schools, for the Academy of Cleveland schools, which is Garrett Morgan, Jane Addams, MLK, Washington Park, and Max Hayes, all those students, they're student ambassadors, and they're part of the program. And so they've been part of it usually since junior year and senior year. And they do lots of things, and we were practicing last Friday to get ready for, because we're doing recruitment, and we're gonna go into middle school, or into the AP classes to recruit students. So they have a lot of, they're great students, so.
So their students come with the, it can be a guidance counselor, it can be, if there's a ninth grade teacher that they have, it can be an AP, that comes, assistant principal, sorry. So the school select, the people who come, so it's over 3 days, and then there's the evening, so sometimes the staff will switch up, but there's always students that are there to represent the schools, to interact with the students and answer questions that they have. So in terms of the booklet, so you'll let the students see, you'll show them, okay, the second page talks about the different career clusters that we went over. Last time you guys identified the career clusters for you. We matched up the high schools here, so you'll walk them through that so that they can see that. You'll also share with the students that there is a map here for you to look at. So again, you're giving them an overview of the materials that you are going to be using to help them go into the session. So 15 minutes here, you're gonna spend with the student. We're also gonna be looking at page 13 of their tracker, which is where they're gonna select the 6 schools. So they're gonna write in their 6 schools, and then they're going to explain why they are going to visit those schools. So again, we wanna make an informed decision. So why are we selecting these 6 schools? What is it based upon? Is it one of the tips that we share with you on the other poster? Can I find that? I should have posted these up. So you can have them refer back to here as they come up to why they're selecting those high schools.
So they set up time to visit independently, like each student goes.
They're going to the high school choice fair, so we bus them to the fair. So every single middle
Okay, so
school
they're not
gets a.
basically like touring the high school?
No,
Okay.
but good point. So there is an opportunity if a student is interested in going to visit that high school on their own, they can set that up to go and visit the high school. So that is something. But as the district, we bus all of the schools to the Woolstein, the 8th grade students to the Woolstein Center with high school. So the students have, the last page on the back is where you'll help them come up with some questions to ask each of the schools, and then a place for them to sign. So after you go through these materials, giving the students an overview of the things that you're going to use to help them make the decision, you want to go ahead and take your break. So you'll take your break. When you come back, you guys are going to go into selecting the best fit high school. So again, this is the largest part of your time that you guys are going to have with the students. So 70 minutes here is what we're looking at spending, because we want them to be able to go through these choices and be thorough with them. Okay? So I am going to skip ahead. So after you guys go through that, so selecting the best fit high school. So the goal is to have the students match their careers they research with the high schools, and then we want them to come up with 6 that they want to visit or learn more about at the high school choice fair. So all of the materials that you all need for this activity, I kind of already went through it because we set it up for the next activity, is on page 4.13 there. So the high school book, you're going to have a flip chart that you'll have, a poster paper, you'll have your markers, they're on my table buried right now. The pens and paper, you'll have your True2U trackers for the students, because all of the things when you go through for them to make their 6 choices, they need to write them in the tracker, their questions in the tracker, and then they'll also need to sign off acknowledging that you're going to follow up with them when you see them in February about if they want to go see those high schools at the fair. So some accountability there. So the students are going to definitely need the tables to write on. So if you have your room reconfigured, you want to go back to the desk so that they can have that space to write on there. All right, so after you guys come back from the break, you've set your room up, you got your posters and things up for the students, and you guys are ready to go. So you're going to have all the students share one of the careers they researched that they haven't shared yet. Okay, so you'll have that conversation. And then you want to refer to the poster that shows the high schools by career clusters. So the one that looks like this, and again, this is also inside of their, the high school choice book. So you'll go ahead and start reading to them. As we discussed earlier, in January, February, you will have the opportunity to learn more about the high schools during the CMSD High School Choice Fair. So you want to review with the students the following steps they may wish to consider when selecting a high school. You may wish to say something like, now that we have done activities to help you think about the importance of making good decisions as well as accepting responsibilities for the consequences that follow, let's think about and use some of the decision-making steps to identify potential high schools you may be interested in. It's important for you to have a sense of who you are, your strengths, your career interests, and what a best high school fit may look like for you. So before you review the descriptions of the high schools, let's discuss tips for you to think about when making good choices. So the poster here. So you'll go about that with the students. And then here on page 4.14, which is also inside of their tracker, it tells them about things that they want, tips for selecting a high school. So you want to refer them to that worksheet, which is page 12. Right? So have them follow along. So you want to think about what you want in a high school. So are you interested in a particular career, a topic of study? If it's some type of athletic you want to look for, so you want to look for a high school that offers those opportunities. Number 2, consider where your friends are going, but don't let it dictate your whole decision. Okay? So you can see your friends no matter what high school you go to, and even make new friends to introduce you to the old. So this is your decision for the future. Discuss your choices with your families. And I read that one verbatim because a lot of students are going to try to choose high schools based upon where their friends are going. And so number 3, when you go to the fair, ask questions. So what electives are there? So these are some example questions. So as you get to that section, if a student is saying, I don't know what questions to ask, you can refer them back to this page. We'll look at step number 3. Are there some questions in here that you would like to ask any of the high schools that you're looking at, and have them select some from here. Number 4, don't rule out a school for one thing. If that school doesn't have as many clubs as another school, don't rule it out. Or if one school has free laptops, don't choose that school because of it. So some schools do give students laptops. If they're a digital program, that's part of their program, so students do get the laptops while they're there. That may be a carrot for a student to go. Similar, yes. So a student may hear that from one of the schools and say, oh, this is the school that I want to go to. Well, remember, you have some careers that you looked at. Does that career line up, that school line up with those career choices? Is this more along the lines of what you're going to be interested in the future? Okay, number 5, don't see the subjects you want. Look at other ways to do things you like, such as after-school programs and clubs. In the book that you have, a lot of schools, they have the high school information sheets where it lists the various after-school programs, different in-school programs, if there's an internship or externship for that school. So the students are able to see, okay, maybe they don't have this during the day or as a part of the curriculum, but hey, they have a robotics after-school program and I'm interested in that. So maybe when I go to the high school choice fair, I would ask that high school, can you tell me about your after-school robotics program, so you can help them explore that option. So after you've gone through that information with the students, you want to go ahead and arrange them in those groups. So considering the careers that they've selected, the career clusters, you want to have the students that we're all interested in, let's see one, let's say hospitality. You want to have those students grouped together. The students who are interested in law and public safety, you want to have those students grouped together. And then you and your partner mentor want to figure out who's going to take which groups, so that you can work and focus in on those students and helping them make those choices. So once you all have divided up your groups, you have selected which mentor is going to handle which groups, you guys want to go ahead and go to work with the materials. So you want to give the students some time to go ahead and look through those things. So review the descriptions, go through those books, and just let them go through. So you might have to do some, some guidance to help keep them on task there. So again, this is 70 minutes, so this is probably the first time that they're gonna have this much access to all of the high schools in one time. So it's probably gonna take them some time to go through that materials. But if you have a group that maybe is not that focused, maybe you're gonna have to, you know, walk them through it a little bit more to help them stay focused. So you'll go through that. So once the students are going through that section, they've looked at the career clusters, they've identified some high schools, let's go ahead and write them in our tracker. So you want them to go ahead and list which 6 schools that they're interested in and why. Okay, so we don't want them arbitrarily picking. Remember, we want them to make an informed decision. We just talked about the decision-making process. Why are you selecting this high school? So they should be able to say why here on this sheet. That may be one of the things, but you can refer them back to this poster. You can refer them back to that those tips for selecting a high school. Okay, so once you have the students go through and they've shared why they're interested in those schools, you want to have them go ahead and focus on what questions they want to ask at the high school choice fair. So maybe you're going through the book and they notice, hey, this school doesn't have this sport and I really want to play this sport. Some high schools, there is an opportunity for them, for example, Max Hayes and John Hayes. Sometimes they share sports programs. So it may be listed on one school but not on the other, but a student may have an opportunity to go ahead and play that sport here. Ginn Academy and Collingwood or even Glenville sometimes share sports. I think football is shared. So there are sometimes it's not offered at this school, but they have an agreement with another school where a student can do something like that. So that might be a question that they want to ask about when they go to the high school choice fair. Have them go ahead and write their 6 questions, and then you want to go ahead and have them sign. And it says, I know, if you look on page 14, I'm sorry, it's 14 of their tracker. It says, I know my mentor will meet with me, students, 10 minutes there. So you want to go ahead and state the first step. I'm on page 4.15. State the first step in making a good decision and identifying the opportunities or challenges. Right now, the students have an opportunity to make a choice about what high school they will attend. So ask the small groups. There's some questions here. So you want to ask the small groups to respond to the following question. So that flip chart and markers, so you want to have one mentor writing and one mentor facilitating the questions here when you get to this activity. So you want that person to serve as a scribe, writing down insights from the responses on the flip chart. Also, if you have a student who is kind of active, you might want to have them scribe. So you're giving that student a job and they have to be on task, you know, listening to what the students are saying and being able to write that up. So even though we suggest a mentor, this might be an opportunity for you to use one of your more active students. So you want to ask the students, how did you decide which 6 schools you will explore? What was important for you in selecting those schools? What do you need to learn more about during the fair to help you narrow your choices down to one school? Because they can only go to one. Or one at a time, I should say. What might be some barriers to you making a good choice about the high school you want to attend? And then you want to close that activity out. So it talks about all the wonderful job that students have done thinking about this. And so you're just kind of congratulating them and talking about the decision-making process. They're just wrapping up that section. Okay. So any questions about that?
So will each group have their own book?
So each group will have their own book. And again, when you pass those out, you want students to write their names on it. Because when we get ready to, I think in April, they're going to make a vision board for high school, and they're going to need that book again.
Now, we collect those back at the end of the session. Put their names on them and collect them.
We collect them back. Students probably will want to revisit it as they get closer to the high school choice fair with their teachers, and that's fine.
Well, between that time.
And they are going to receive a book similar to this, I want to add, that comes directly from the school district. The only difference in that book is that the high school information sheets that you see there will not be in there. So these sheets here, this is something that Molly and I have collected from each of the high schools and added to this. What the students will get though is the general information sheets that look like this. So that charted information, they won't have that in the booklet that they're going to get from the
Will students
district.
have access to those particular books?
They're going to get one from the school district.
but during the tendency of them receiving that, okay? And we're leaving those books with their names on
Mm-hmm.
from our groups, what do you call them?
Cohorts.
Much. Okay, that, will they have access to review those on their own in the material that's stored in the respective school where they are?
So if the teacher,
Will they allow them to take, because it's gonna be stored there until February, into one season?
yeah, so the teacher has access to it, we're storing them, you know, at the school,
Okay.
so if they wanna bring them out for the students,
But
then,
is that the
they
teacher's
could.
decision?
oh, it would need to be, because the students, we won't want the students going to the game taking out anything.
Okay.
So it definitely would be with the teacher, but the students will receive an official booklet from the school district for them to take home. Their parents will receive some. It'll have their ID codes in there, and I know this is a lot more information than we need, but they're going to get one from the school district. The only difference, though, is that they will not have the high school information sheets, because this is something that we created for True2U. But they will have the general high school information here. So this charted information will not be in the booklet that they receive from the school district. All right, so you've gone through that, and you completed that activity with the students, and again, we're gonna end on a high note here, so we're gonna go ahead and go into the icebreaker for the students. We did this one before, so I will be brief. So as you do this activity, we want the mentors to participate as well. So you are going to, you can pass around the bag and have the students select the Starburst themselves, or if you want to just pour some on the table and have them select out of there, you can. So whatever works best for your group, you want to be able to go ahead and do. So you have the bag of Starburst for this. You're going to have the icebreaker questions for the students here.
Are those posted too?
Yep, you'll be able to post these up. Yep, you'll be able to post this part up here. However, you do not want students to see this first. You want them to select their Starburst first, okay? You want them to select their Starburst, so you don't want the students to see this poster. So just go ahead and pass it out, select your Starburst, okay? So once the students go, remember mentors participate, you want to select 3. So I will pour some out because I'm sure the candy with you all. You said no thanks. All right. So everybody, you can have candy, but just go ahead and select one that you want for this activity. So you want to select 3 different colors. Okay, so we're just gonna do one for this one. So you'll select 3 different colors. Remember, mentors, you select as well, because we want you to share out with the students too. So after you've done that, you're gonna go ahead and explain to students what we're gonna be doing. So don't eat the Starburst, that will probably be something to share with the students. But if they do, keep the wrapper, okay? All right, so you wanna share with the students that each color represents an icebreaker questions. So remember, it says in bold here, good. Questions should be revealed after everyone has selected their candy. So please don't put this up first, otherwise kids will definitely figure it out. So you want to use the icebreaker slider, if possible, write the colors and questions on the flip chart or board for all to see. So you'll have the flip chart paper, you can select your markers and write the questions, or you can post this up depending on how big your room is, okay? So if you have a big classroom, this is going to be hard to see, so you're going to need to write it out on that flip chart paper there. So you want to share, so read the questions. I will probably read the questions out so everybody knows what they are. And then you want to have everyone, including the mentor, share out. So who wants to go? We'll close out with that. Anybody want to share?
Do orange first.
Okay. So you have orange. It says, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Oh.
Yep, you got to get the answer.
Let's see. Best piece of advice I've ever gotten. There's gotta be so many.
Yeah, especially our age.
Don't lift the load if you can drag it.
Oh. So you have to tell us what that means.
Well, no, not really. Like for instance, when you go across the carpet, them big long heavy tables, you can slide them instead of trying to pick them up and carry them.
Okay. I thought it was
Make it easy on your back is what it's.
okay.
Oh, it's okay, so it's a literal.
Yeah, it was a little one. I was thinking it was something too. That's why I was like, we have to share that one with us. Okay. Anybody else want to go? Just for the sake of this? Okay, so you have Red. So if you could be any animal, what would you be and why?
I'd be a wolf because I'd be a wolf in sheep's clothing because I'm nice to people.
Oh, wow. Okay, good one. So wolf and sheep's close, so you guys watch out for it. Okay,
That
good
will
one.
cause
Red? So what animal?
Kangaroo.
A kangaroo? Why?
Kangaroo.
Like jump rope high.
Okay, nice one. Anybody else want to go? Ladies, are you a lady?
Where's pink? Come on.
Where's the thing?
You got yellow?
Yellow, yes.
Okay.
Good job.
So if you could host a talk show, who would be your guest and why? Be your first guest and why?
And I have done a talk show.
Kidding.
I'm going to say, right now, Obama.
Okay.
Yeah, I just said Michelle.
And why? And why?
Oh, wow. Inspired, intrigued, and just overwhelmed.
Okay.
She just read the night before Christmas. You only lit the tree.
Oh, really? Oh,
wow.
yeah, that's right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would go ahead and have the students go through that, and then you also want to include yourselves as mentors. You want to share based upon the colors that you have as well.
One
So-
more, pink.
Oh, pink, anybody?
No.
First thing.
You want to go pink? So what's your favorite movie?
I really like all the Harry Potter movies.
Okay.
To be honest.
You say Harry?
Yeah, I like all of them. I don't really have, well, I like them.
Dirt on
Yeah, I like all of them.
Okay.
it. Too old.
Yeah, I like Harry Potter movies too. They've been on TV quite a bit lately, so I've been
Shame.
watching them.
Shame.
I
Okay.
just went to see the movie Accountant, really good.
Oh, I didn't hear about that one. I
The
count.
Accountant.
Okay, so I will keep us on task.
Entourage, wasn't it?
So you guys will do this activity with the students. You will share out also as mentors to wrap up the activity. So you want to thank the students for sharing more about themselves and let them know it's nice for everyone in the group to learn more about each other. It's important that we know about ourselves, think about what we like and why we like it, and that we learn and what we learn about other people. And I will share that in the student feedback surveys I've been receiving, they like the opportunity of learning more about their classmates and you all. So that's been feedback that I have noticed. So this will be another activity for them to do that. So you'll close out with this. In your closing, you want to ask 2 to 3 students to recap what the session was about. You have them share what they like most, what they learned. Also provide feedback on how the activities can be improved. So you want to have one mentor in your notes that you all do, you know, sharing some things if there's some improvements that we need to know. Also, you want to ask 2 to 3 students to share why they think taking time to make decisions is important. And then also how they're feeling about attending the high school choice fair in January. And so we want to make sure that those get back in the bin or they get to the teacher so that they can be inter-office mail. And the reason is because they're barcoded, so if they're scanned, I have to do them manually. You can't run them through the machine. So just a note, please, if you know your mentor partners are taking them, let them know to leave them with the teachers. I'll also remind the teachers. Okay. And then remind the students you will not see them again for True2U until February. So you won't be back in January. You won't see them until February. All right, so that's the end of the session. Any questions, anything unclear, needs to be clarified?
So what happens again, oftentimes, because of the unforeseen has to be anticipated. Okay, because especially if we're moving around like nomads, or like displaced persons to one part of the village to the other, and this happens and that happens. Is it an absolute crime, or is it a serious impact on the purpose that we don't get there? Yeah, sometimes that happens because of unavoidable delays.
Yeah, we need to get to the last section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
It
last
happens
section
a lot.
of the-
Probably more times than we hoped that it would happen
Yeah.
with the students. So if you notice that, we know that a big piece of this lesson is to go through the decision-making process and have them make those high school selections.
Yes.
So knowing ahead of time what are the big parts that you really should get through, I think is key. There will be an opportunity, and I may be misquoting, I know we did this last year, where there was an opportunity to make up some things, not this year. Okay.
But did she
I think it was probably the fourth session.
Okay, so that actually is not an option. I think I might have shared that with people before, because we did it last year and I didn't look ahead that far enough.
Is that addressed, or you just bite the
I-
bullet and say?
Yeah, you would definitely, if you can't get to everything, we won't have that session like we had last year where we can kind of make up some things. So in knowing that, I would definitely, need to keep the peace. Just know that this lesson is very important because this is the basis of our program. Exactly. So we definitely need students to think about those high school choices and why they're selecting that. That is a huge part
Just
of it.
have like a novice.
So for example, if I found that when we got to that break point, or before the break, we were wrapping up on time, I probably would not do that 15-minute introduction to materials because we're gonna use them in that section. The icebreaker, it's fun, but what's important? We wanna get to that lesson. And you can give them the starburst as you're going along and you notice that they're working well and encourage them, to take the lesson more seriously and get things done. So I would think about cutting and trimming in those areas most definitely, because we definitely want to have them hit those 6 schools.
I'm not sure, but I think the teacher in our class had the student do surveys. Does he have that?
Yeah,
I think she does.
I'm
I
sorry.
think, yeah.
Yeah, she has.
think she's
She has.
been doing it.
Yeah, Ms. Beavers has. Molly, did you want to say something about any of that? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope this was very helpful. Feel free to have another Starburst.
Oh.
All right, thank you.
Those cookies.
Oh, absolutely.
That's